Let's now talk about parsing, all right? A really important concept. And parsing is something that you and I are extremely familiar with because we do it all the time. Highly intelligent brain parses stuff, extracts the meaning, and does things with it. So when we're dealing with text, often what we need to do is pull it apart, okay? We need to pull it apart, restructure it so that it's in a better position to be either processed or stored. When we do that, this is called parsing. And what we do, we're looking at things and extracting things around the structure of a piece of text. So, where does the word come from? Well, it's about syntax analysis is its original meaning. And where do we need to parse? Say natural language processing, spelling, grammar checks. These are all parsing. So when you see that beautiful red underline that you get in things like Microsoft Word, what that is as the text has been parsed, it's going, this sentence or this word with the red doesn't make sense with the green or the blue. The sentence doesn't make sense. So this is what occurs. And you know it, particularly in your native tongue, when someone says something slightly different to how you're used to, you hear that and you go, well, that was a bit strange, because your brain has parsed it and it goes, this isn't making fully sense. Web search indexes get parsed, okay? Compilers parse the code that we write to check it for things like syntax. Is it correct syntax? Is it correct code? Okay, they're understanding statements, they're understanding variables, as we've already seen where the Java compiler understood that there was a mistake because it parsed the text and that num1, num2 wasn't in a different function. Tokenizing is a really important part of parsing. And as I've said there, it's really our first step that we take. And what happens is we're going to break the text stream into its basic fundamental elements, okay? And when we do that, each of these elements we refer to as a token. Now, what are the tokens? Well, that is dependent on what are we actually parsing? What's the text? Are we parsing a single word? An entire line? It might be an equation. What are we parsing will determine what a token is. Now, we can break tokens up. Okay, they can be broken up by characters, okay, a character or characters, and what they do, or what these characters do, is they delimit the boundary, all right? So they become like the delimiter. Now, one of the ones we do, new line characters. The new line character is a fantastic point to delimit on, okay? Spaces that separate words, another brilliant delimiter, commas, periods, things like that, okay? These are the things that we can use when we start to tokenize, because we use them as delimiters and tokenize based on that. So when it comes to Java, we've got two classes that we can really use when it comes to tokenizing. String tokenizer, and guess what that's used with? Yes, that's right, strings. We've also got stream tokenizer, and I'm sure you already guessed that or you read, it's used with streams, okay? We're going to be focusing mostly on splitting things using regexes, and we're going to use the method split, all right? And the method is in the string class, and we'll see it as we go along, okay? Now, with string, what we get is when we start to tokenize, okay, it's not returning the delimiting character. character. That's important to know. The delimiting character isn't returned. What's returned is the token that's separated by the delimiters, okay? And that's what we're going to be doing, and you're going to see that in just a second. The CSV file is absolutely superb, okay? So I want to introduce this comma separated value file, all right? And we're going to use split with it later on. Now, when it comes to data storage and moving things around, the CSV file is absolutely fantastic for doing that. And it's one of the most, or a very common file format that's used, particularly on the internet, for moving data around. Okay, so when we're storing data, we always have to ask, what format should we store it in? Okay, do we do table, matrix, columns, rows, all of these kinds of things? When we do CSV files, that becomes really helpful. So one row is on one line, one row of the table, one row of the matrix is on that one line. And then each row can contain multiple fields, all right? And those fields are separated per column, which is with the comma. So I might have David, comma, McMeekin. So what we have now is a comma separated value file where we separate, and that might be first name, and this is family name. A really good way to go about doing things. So that's what I'm saying. Each field, the value is separated by a comma. So let's take a look at this example here. All right, so this is what it's looking like pictorial, okay, here on the left hand side, and we've got our title, our label of each of the series, and then we have our values, and you can see that here. We've got January 34, 67, 34, 67. So often when you open a CSV file, depending how your computer's set up, often it'll open up in Microsoft Excel or Numbers, something like that. And it displays it in this manner, but this is what it really looks like. What are some notes we have to look at, okay, when we start to think of things? So delimiting commas don't have any trailing spaces. Column sizes don't have to be consistent across the rows, which is really nice. We can have them wider and narrower in that sense. So you saw that in our example where we had the name of places, the region or something it said, and then we just had smaller values. So we're able to do that when we're dealing with CSV files. Numeric data is converted into its textual equivalent. So we need to be aware of that. When we're saving things, integers directly, we might end up with some strange looking values. So we have to be aware that we're saving things in an ASCII format, and often when it's read in with Java or written out, we need to ensure that we've converted it to the textual representation, or we're extracting the digit from the textual representation. Text versus binary, okay? We don't have to save the table data in CSV format, okay? We can move it into a binary format, and then it is more efficient because we know how large each file is. Integers are 4 bytes, things like that. Okay, advantages of CSV, very easy for us to read and for us just to go in and edit that raw data in a text editor, for instance. Very, very portable. Okay, different platforms, different systems, we send it as a CSV file, easily done. Okay, Fields, well, they're easily parsed because they're explicitly separated with commas. So we search for the commas and we extract the data between the commas. Really nice to work with. It's also a really, really, really widely used format, okay? Large amounts of what we call spatial data, where we are storing things like latitude and longitude and altitude in that sense, are stored in a CSV file format, and it's very well used and it's really fun to parse and play with. And then you send it to something like Google Maps and you can display it beautifully. Okay, and then XML. XML is another formatting standard that is fantastic for data interchange. Now, string.split and CSV data. We're going to parse some data using string.split. And to do that, we're going to call the strings variables split method, okay? And it's pretty straightforward. This is going to return a string array that contains each part of the split in each element of the array. And you're going to see this if you're going, I don't understand what you're talking about. And then we iterate over the array and extract the data as we want to. So, parsing a single row. We get a single row from our CSV file, comes in. String, okay, split line we've called it. Split line is going to be CSV row, which is a string. We call the method split and we tell it split it on the comma. That's it. And we go through doing that. We loop through, all right? And all we're doing here is printing out the split string. That's it. Really simple, really straightforward. And you're going to see this, and the code is available for you to use. What's with our output? This is, let's look at it, our file, our CSV data file, okay, 3 rows in it. And when we work through these things using our read file example, this is what we're getting. And process line, you go, now read file example method, you're going to see that in the code that's provided with the lecture slides, okay? And you'll see that we go through it, and this, we've stripped out of it the commas beautifully. And this code you will provide for you, want you to use it, to change it, to adjust your CSV files and have a different delimiter and adjust how you use the delimiter and see what you get.